Hey, good afternoon. My name is Brent Beavers. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in Charge for the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives here in St. Louis, Missouri. We come to you today to talk to about an important and alarming trend that's not only happening here in the Eastern District of Missouri, but all across the country. This fall, ATF launched an investigation actually in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, that led to the arrest of 8 people on federal machine gun charges. These charges stem from agents purchasing devices that can be, they're aftermarket devices that can be added to firearms to make them fully automatic machine guns. 2022, ATF saw about a 500% increase in these type of aftermarket devices. It's really important to say that these are devices that are not made by the firearms manufacturer. They're made with 3D printers or purchased overseas in China from manufacturers in China. They're very dangerous. They're very deadly. They're referred to as Glock switches, lightning links, different conversion type devices like that. They're mentioned in music, but they are, if not recognized or not known what they are or what they look like, people in the public may not know the danger that they are facing when they encounter these. I'll turn that over to Chief Sack and let him talk about some of the local statistics here in St. Louis.
Sure. I'm Colonel Mike Sack, the Interim Chief of Police in the City of St. Louis. And as you've heard, this is a serious issue in the region. It's not just a St. Louis City issue, it's an issue in the St. Louis area. We've seen a significant increase in these switches being seized. In 2019, we seized 1. In 2020, we seized 1. In 2021, we seized 4. And last year, we seized 27. Of that total of 33, 4 of the devices didn't work. And 8 of the devices did not work according to their design or their build. They either would not go back to semi-auto from full auto. They're uncontrollable in one way or another. And year to date, I was talking to the Intel Lieutenant before I left the building. Today is the 5th of January. We've seized 3 so far this year. So this is the first week of the year. In addition to the seizures, the ones that we can actually get our hands on, we also have ShotSpotter, which is a tool that we use. It's located in various neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. It's an acoustic device, tracks the sounds of gunfire, can differentiate pretty well between fireworks and gunfire, and it tracks those. In 2021, it captured 66 incidents of full auto fire. That's not a discharge or discharge from half a dozen weapons. That's 66 different events where there was full auto gunfire. Last year, 2022 through December 12th, we recorded 339 separate events of full auto gunfire in the city of St. Louis. The ballistic evidence that we've recovered in the county's lab as well shows us these weapons are crossing boundaries. We've got cartridge cases located in the city of St. Louis and in the county and various municipalities out of the county that are coming back to the same gun that's being bounced back and forth. I'm sure they're probably showing up in Illinois as well. So these guns move through the community. St. Louis County had in 2021 32 separate incidents of full auto gunfire tracked by their ShotSpotter system. And last year, 2022, they had 123 separate incidents. You can't determine the caliber or type of weapon that's used through ShotSpotter. It just tells you that it is occurring, and it gives you a pretty accurate location of where it's occurring at. But when we recover cartridge casings, and those are examined at the lab, some of the most frequent firearms coming back are going to be the Glocks. We found some with 40 caliber and 357 SIG caliber as well. These devices are dangerous. They're dangerous to officers. We don't carry that type of weapon in a normal patrol routine. A few weeks ago, I guess, we had some officers get a call for a subject who is asleep at the wheel of a car. Could be tired off of work, whatever it may be. So the officers go to investigate, and inside the vehicle is what you see in the top right photo here. It's a Glock, it's full auto, and it had a 50-round drum on it. So, and it also has a foregrip, which makes it more stable when you discharge that firearm. So you can imagine, this person's now waking up, and the officers are standing at the window knocking, hey, you okay? What's going on here? The subject was initially uncooperative, but eventually cooperated with the officers, and they also located narcotics in the vehicle in addition to that full auto switch, which made the firearm a machine gun. These things are dangerous to our officers because of the rate of fire of these weapons. They're also dangerous to everybody in the neighborhood because of their inaccuracy. You can imagine a pistol, a short-barreled, weapon, a 4-inch barrel, a 5-inch barrel, firing full auto. It's hard to control that. You're not going to get much accuracy. We already have issues with shots being fired in some of our neighborhoods and into homes or into vehicles. Imagine somebody with a full auto handgun like that with a 50-round drum discharging that weapon in a neighborhood within our community. So those things are inherently dangerous to all of us, and it's critically important that we bring this to attention to people. And I would just say, if any family member knows of such a device within their household, contact us. We'll gladly come seize it and take it away. They're just inherently dangerous, and we really need to focus on this type of weapon that's now come into our community.
Yeah, so there's some examples of what these devices would look like on the table. Obviously, these are much bigger than what they would be seen on a firearm for you to observe. They're much smaller. As Chief said, many of these firearms can shoot hundreds of rounds. They're very dangerous. We conducted training for local law enforcement here in the St. Louis area this summer. And after our local law enforcement partners attended the training, many of them went back to their property rooms and started examining firearms, and some of these were overlooked. So we're trying to build the awareness, not only for our law enforcement partners, but also people in the public, that this is a very dangerous aftermarket firearm part that can be dangerous not just to law enforcement, also to the general public. I'll go to U.S. Attorney Fleming.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Sayler Fleming, the U.S. Attorney here in the Eastern District of Missouri. I want to talk a little bit about federal law, punishments, and what we're doing in our office. Machine guns, which are defined to include Glock switches, auto sears, these conversion devices that Chief Sack and ASAC Beavers are talking about, are covered by a couple of different federal statutes. You good?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't know if I needed to move closer.
No, we're fine.
For instance, Title 18, United States Code, Section 922.0 makes the mere possession or transfer of machine guns, like I said, which would include Glock switches, which would include auto sears and conversion devices, illegal. Also, the National Firearms Act places restrictions on, among other things, making and transferring machine guns. And consistent with what you've already heard today, our office is also seeing an increase in prosecutions that include conversion devices. By way of example, our office recently filed a superseding indictment charging John Whitney Jr. with, among other crimes, brandishing and discharging a firearm in March of 2022, killing 16-year-old Terrion Smith. The surveillance video shows Mr. Whitney engaging in what is believed to be suspected narcotic sales before entering the lobby of that loft, which was in downtown St. Louis. And according to public court documents, Mr. Whitney admitted using a Glock firearm equipped with a switch when he killed Mr. Smith. Among the, what I would say, many alarming details of this case, the evidence shows that that switch allowed Mr. Whitney to rapidly fire off 20 rounds in approximately 3 to 4 seconds. When Mr. Whitney was arrested the following month, he was in possession of numerous firearms and fentanyl. Those firearms included a fully automatic Glock with an extended magazine, as well as an AR-15 style rifle equipped with an auto sear. That's just one of the many prosecutions our office has pending involving a conversion device. I won't get into the details, but it is my understanding that in fact, just yesterday there was yet another case that was indicted by our office that you'll receive information on shortly. What I want to make very clear is that our office is taking Glock switches and these similar types of conversion devices very seriously. We will use every statute, every punishment provision, every sentencing enhancement that we have available to us should someone choose to illegally possess or use one of these conversion devices. Now, under federal law, the mere possession of the device is punishable by up to 10 years of imprisonment. But for those that plan to use a firearm equipped with one of these devices when they're out selling drugs, or when they commit a crime of violence as defined under federal law, let this serve as a notice. You're going to be looking at a mandatory minimum. That's not less than 30 years imprisonment. And let me add that that is consecutive to any other sentence you may receive. Like I said, our office is taking this extremely seriously, and we will use all of the statutes and all of the punishment provisions that we have available to us. Finally, piggybacking off of Chief Sack, I want to encourage everyone, and that includes any police department in the district, but any private citizens as well, to contact ATF, contact your local police department, or contact us if you come across a Glock switch, if you have information about them or any other conversion devices. As I said, we will be prosecuting these cases to the fullest extent of the law.
And contacting ATF or any local law enforcement partners in the area, any of our partners will be ready to investigate these matters. ATF does have a tip line, 888 ATF tips. Caller can remain anonymous. We'll do whatever we can, just as the U.S. Attorney and the Chief said, to investigate these cases thoroughly and take them off the street.
Question?
Are you taking questions?
So how does this change police's approach, obviously knowing that, it's more, deadly or more violent that it makes the guns?
Well, this is Missouri, so everybody can have a gun. You can carry it openly, you wander the street with a long barreled firearm or whatever. But now in the back of the mind of every officer, we don't know if that thing has an auto sear in it or a Glock switch on it. So that just makes our jobs more dangerous, more difficult, and it is a significant challenge, not only to our agency, but any other agency as well. Certainly people are allowed to own, possess, and carry firearms, but not modified or having any of these devices placed inside them. I don't know any reason why somebody would carry a weapon with such a device on the street. Even at the firearms ranges, you'll see here shortly, they're very difficult to control. It makes no sense if you want to use it for self-defense, because your chances of hitting your target after the first round are diminished greatly because of recoil and everything else that's happening within the firearm. But it just makes our job much more difficult.
So the last several years, the police department, about 90% of the guns that have gone through the lab are semi-automatic. Is there a discrepancy in cataloging these add-ons or aftermarket devices that's creating that discrepancy between fully automatic gun seized and automatic gun seized?
Yes, so
So
in our lab or in any lab, they'll be noted as to whether it's a semi-auto or a full auto weapon. So anything that we recover that has one of these devices in it will be listed as full auto.
So those numbers are pretty low. I'm wondering if are they just not being confiscated as often as pistols are, or semi-automatic pistols?
Well, I would say that the numbers are going up. We went from 1 to 27, and today's the 5th, and we got 3. So potentially we're on pace for 150. So yes, out of the pool of all guns that are seized by us, it's a small proportion, but the risk that these firearms pose to the community is far greater, because with a semi-auto weapon or a revolver, I have to pull the trigger every time to shoot at someone or a house or whatever it is that somebody might be doing illegally. But this thing, you just pull the trigger and you'll drop 20, 30 rounds in a heartbeat. They're that rapid, but they're also uncontrollable.
We hope to show you today, first, just a semi-automatic pistol, normal firing rate, and then a pistol with a conversion device, and you'll really get an idea of what the chief's talking about and how fast it'll go. As I mentioned early on in this trend, as we learn more, now we're becoming more aware and looking at these firearms as they're coming in and seeing the auto sear, the drop-in auto sear is not visible on the outside of the firearm, so it's not something you're going to know. The conversion device is somewhat noticeable, but it's still, it does take a trained eye. And from an ATF standpoint, we're working with our partners and what we're seeing on the streets to make sure that we're educating not only law enforcement, but also here to the general public.
Yeah, if I could also add, when I was a young policeman on a shooting scene, there might be 6 or 8 cartridge casings laying on the ground. When I was down on the 4th floor where homicide's at, we might find 30, on some occasions more than that. Now it's not uncommon to find, scores of cartridge casings laying on the ground. Now think about it. If you got a victim that gets shot 2 or 3 times, we're fortunate here to have 2 level 1 trauma centers, which are pretty close to anybody in the population center, including St. Louis County. We had a couple officers whose lives were saved by going to one when they're coming from North County. But if you're shooting somebody with 30, 35, 40, or 50 round drum, you may not be accurate, but instead of hitting them 2 or 3 times, you might hit them 12 times. And so, every shooting is, a potential homicide. Maybe it's where they were shot on their person or the proximity to that level 1 trauma center. The more projectiles that go down range, the greater chance of somebody getting hit and somebody being hurt more seriously.
Is there any way you guys have to determine how many homicides the increase may have been attributed to just more bullets going in? I know we talk about sometimes the reverse factor of that some shootings end up not being homicides, but do we know if we could potentially just start seeing more of these assault firsts turning into a homicide, or if that trend is already happening, numbers wise?
So in regards to whether Glock switches or sears are used in homicides, once the case is solved, they know who did it, they have a weapon, or they know of a weapon, maybe the weapon's not recovered, but they got sufficient evidence to proceed with the case based on video or witness testimony. If we know that there's a sear involved in it, we would certainly present that piece of the case, through the circuit attorney's office to the U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. It's hard to say until the case is cleared what type of firearm may have been used in that event.
Madam Circuit Attorney, or excuse me, U.S. Attorney, given that we know some of these are being 3D printed, come from China, how big of an impact does prosecuting the users actually have, and how do you get upstream to the producers, given that some of them are foreign? And this, I guess, would be a question too for you, Beavers.
Yeah, so, we work with not only our state and local partners, but also our other federal partners to look at origins of these devices. We look for users of the devices and origins. The flow is very great. Obviously, if you look at initially a 3D printer was the size of like a Coke machine, and now 3D printers are much smaller and more people can gain access to them. So the source is great. We obviously look and investigate each case thoroughly and see if we can take down the source from the user.
Can you explain with the Glock, there's no safety, is that correct? And so once they load this, is it like a video game or worse?
So a Glock firearm, and we got a firearms guy back here, but the Glock, the way it's designed, if you look at the trigger of the Glock, there's a small piece that protrudes from the trigger. It would appear like this, and then when you pull the trigger, this piece comes back, and that's actually the safety. It's called a Glock safety. So you've got to depress that first before you can pull the trigger fully to the back. If you were to try to pull these two side pieces of the trigger, it wouldn't go. So that's separate from the sear, the switch that goes on there, that's affixed to the top rear of the slide of the pistol, and that impacts or affects the firing mechanism and allows it to continue to fire as long as the trigger's pulled. But in some of these failures that our lab has discovered, you can pull the trigger and let go and it still keep going off. So imagine being out there with whatever the street celebrating New Year's and pulling it and letting go, and you're with a bunch of friends and you lower your arm and the weapon's now still going off. So it's just an inherently dangerous device.
At the most basic level, when we talk about what people should be looking for, that gun is clearly modified. Anybody who saw that would think that doesn't exactly look quote unquote normal. But what do you have there on the table? Are there things that are hidden? You touched on this earlier. What are people looking for when we talk about these modifications? Is it visible or not?
So these two devices here would be on, these are larger devices obviously than, these have been blown up so that you can photograph them. But these two devices would be on the back of a semi-automatic handgun. This device is a drop-in auto sear that would be inside of a rifle. So these are much bigger. They're really smaller pieces normally. Obviously, you see the handgun. We'll show you one on an actual firearm today to kind of get an idea of what it looks like. And even as you stand back behind, how far from a distance, how small it actually looks, and looks more flush with the firearm. The technology is getting better and better. These pieces are getting smaller and smaller.
And could we go to, I know you said you're going to email us some of the details about one of the cases that just happened. Could you include, are those pictures included in that email as well? Or if not, could we get a copy of it, like digitally?
Robert can get you copies of it.
Okay, thanks.
So the device is up here on this firearm. Right there.
And that's enabling what?
And that's enabling the trigger to, one pull of the trigger to fire multiple rounds.
On that, that other picture in between a mattress and a box spring, that's a Glock handgun. The only thing that you can see that's different than what it would look like normally is that little black piece right there. So that's how concealed this is.
And you see in this picture, here it is. Obviously from this angle, it looks a little more flush, harder to distinguish than from this side where it sticks out. And, you know, an officer comes up, finds us in a crevice. It doesn't, you know, you got to recognize that from your training. That's why we want to make everybody aware of that difference, potential difference in the firearm.
Do the devices make the, like, if you are seizing a weapon in a, you know, between a mattress and a box spring, for example, are they any touchier when you handle them, or is it just when you fire them?
Well, just as the chief mentioned, I mean, these are aftermarket devices, and they do not function as designed. They're very dangerous. So.
You've altered the weapon, so it's like your warranty's expired. Normally, when you buy a firearm, if you were to drop your pistol, you know, there's a drop test they go through to where it wouldn't discharge. Who knows what this will do? So, yeah.
And to be clear from a legal perspective, you know, we're talking about, you know, let's say a crime was committed but with one of those. You're talking about an additional probably 20 years added on because of the modification. I was just trying to get a perspective on, you know, how much more time or how much more punishment could happen, you know, if you're using one of these.
Let's say you commit a crime that federal law defines as a crime of violence or a serious drug trafficking offense. If you possessed a firearm during that, we have a charge 18 U.S.C. 924C. That ranges from 5 years to 10 years, depending on whether you possess the firearm, brandish the firearm, discharge the firearm. If you have, let's say you're using a Glock, but it is equipped with a Glock switch, now making it a machine gun, now you're looking at a mandatory minimum of 30 years, consecutive to any other sentences you may receive on those other crimes. So it takes that 924C, it's like a 924C on steroids.
Gotcha.
Touching a little bit back on the 3D printing, we talked about, some of these being made in other countries, but the internet, you can be anywhere in the world. So how do you navigate that space where someone can just download a 3D printer file and just print it at home? Like how, from the law enforcement side, are you tackling that?
Well, it's, as I mentioned, looking at each case on a case-by-case basis, trying to identify the area or the origin of where they are and what's the best venue or judicial district that origin is. Making sure that we're working in conjunction with all our partners to, if we see something in another area, how we can work as a collective team to, attack that problem.
I think it's ASAC Beavers pointed out, and Chief Sack has as well, this is an emerging trend as the numbers, I think, play out. One of the things, that's part of the reason we're having this press conference now, is to educate the public on this so that, for instance, if they, with 3D printers, I think a lot of kids got them for Christmas this year, based on photos that I've seen. But so that if you hear of people manufacturing these, making these, or you happen to see them, that they, one, have some knowledge base as to what they are, the dangers that they present, that they are illegal, and that they know who to contact.
I know a lot of libraries, maker spaces will have these. If they see this or suspect this, are they at risk of any liability for reporting it if they, allow someone to unknowingly use it for printing these devices?
I don't want to get into answering that question. I mean, if that is unintentional, I don't want to go down that road. What I would strongly encourage them to do, if they have any information about that, their very first phone call either needs to be to their local police department or to ATF. That is not information that they would want to sit on.
As this is emerging, over the course of the last couple of years, is your office or have any lawmakers talked to you, Chief, about, hey, how can we handle this on the legislative side, to make sure that we have stuff in the books there to kind of go hand in hand with federal?
Well, I think the federal laws are very strong. 30 years before your state charged the robbery or that you might have committed a homicide is substantial time, and there's no break on that. You have to do it all. So the laws are there. We've got the lab, the officers are being trained. The information's coming out to the community, partnering together with individuals within the community, working with our federal partners and the U.S. Attorney's Office on the back end for whatever state charges might be pending. I think that's probably the best answer for prosecution. I think we've got the laws there. It's just a matter of being able to try and, like Zach Beavers was saying, we have trouble trying to keep drugs coming in from China and Mexico and elsewhere. These things are also easily imported or made here in the United States. It's going to be a tough go going forward to try and control this. That's why we want to, like the Sayler said, get ahead of this as quickly as we can.